G'day viewers, this is the New Jersey Transit cab car. Down the other end is an ALP46 that will be providing the motive power for our run today. Let's jump in here and see how to drive this thing. Pop the HUD on so we can find things. I can leave that door open, it doesn't really matter. Let's get this one open. And this one. And we'll close this one again, because, you know, we don't want those passenger-type creatures getting in here, do we? Now, I am going to turn on one of the safety systems. I'm going to turn on the ACES fuse. I'm not going to turn on the alerter, because to be quite honest with you, when it goes off and it puts the brakes on, I haven't been able to figure out how to get out of it. Now, let's get this set up and running. First up, our reverser is in the isolated position, so let's get that into forwards. And at the moment our brakes are cut out, so let's cut them in, and I'm going to start the process of releasing, but as soon as that red needle moves, I'm going to go back into lap. There we go, let's go into lap and hold that, because I don't actually want the train to move. And let's put our auxiliary lights to auto and bright. Now I didn't want it to move, but I did want it to start pumping the system up, which it is doing. Okay, we can unlock our doors. That's just locking that one I had open, so let's, well, yeah, the game's happy, whatever. That's just the one that I opened to get in here. But anyway, let's get going. So I'm going to release the brakes. We're allowed to do 35 mile an hour, as you can see here. Now, I have to say this is an early access build. Let's pop our bell on as well. And what we experience building or having this tutorial or watching this tutorial might be a little bit different to what actually releases. We're just coming out of Newark, Penn right now on our way to Secaucus. A lot more power. We're allowed to do 45 now, so those little blip 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 noises were. And what I'm looking at is the green bar that's running around the speedometer is telling me that. And I'm also using the hints from the HUD in the top right hand corner. Approaching our speed, so I'll just bring it down a bit now. Not a lot of noise in here. If you want to hear a bit more, you can pop the window open, but mostly you hear wind, because of course this isn't a locomotive, it's a passenger carriage with a driving position in the back. I've got our power right off. Now if you keep going the other way, you go into dynamic braking. But to me, the dynamic braking doesn't actually seem to do an awful lot at this point, so I'm not sure if the loco at the other end actually supports it. Right, we're allowed up to 60 mile an hour now. So the green bar's gone up to 60 on the speedometer down here. So we'll cruise on up. It's a good idea to stay a little bit below the maximum allowable speed, so that you can react to things. The other thing that can be handy is to put your brake lever into the hold position, just because it's physically less distance to travel to service if you do need to react to something. Now if we get a speed down for some reason, what will basically happen is the green bar will end up with a red portion when you're over the speed, and you need to get into suppression braking, which means dropping at least down to about 90 psi on the equalizing reservoir. I definitely use the equalizing reservoir, which is the white needle, rather than seeing how much air you've got in the brake cylinder because if you watch the brake cylinder, you're going to brake too much and you'll end up stopping. You only want to get into suppression and then release it. So get down to the speed quickly and then release the brakes so that you can keep going. Just had to acknowledge that our speed was brought down to 60 then, but we were under it, so I didn't really have to do anything apart from acknowledge. And the speed can go up and down depending on what's in front of you. And for the simple things like bridges and points, curves, etc. According to the ADU, we're allowed back up to 90, but I know we have to be doing 60 in 800 yards or so, so we're not going to be doing that. And you can see now that the speed is creeping down on the ADU. So you need to bring your speed down faster than that curve is moving so that you don't get a penalty brake application. Yeah, 60 for the bridge, acknowledging the speed down. Doesn't matter if you're already doing less than the speed, you still have to acknowledge it. Got 45 coming up. This time I'm not going to preempt it. And there was no change there, so I didn't have to acknowledge. Now normally your route knowledge would tell you to start slowing down for this 45 now, but I just want to show you what happens. Alright, so we've got an overspeed, so I'm dropping it down to 90 and lapping. We're in suppression. And I can't release it till we actually get to the speed. Now I can. There we go. So we didn't end up stopping, but we came down quite a bit lower than the speed, but we've got Secaucus coming up anyway, so it's not a big deal. So if you're watching this gauge, what I did is I dropped that from 110 down to just under 90, and I held and then went back to lap on the brakes. So I went into the service position here and then into the lap position. I'll just do a bit of a service brake now, since we're coming into the platform. Just release that again. I probably held that a little bit long, I think. So I'll just crawl into Secaucus. It does take quite a bit of getting used to, particularly when you're having to brake the train when you're not in the locomotive that's controlling it. It makes the job twice as difficult because the sound cues you would normally get, you just don't get in this thing because the brake release isn't happening here, it's happening at the other end. The brake application. I was actually locked out from powering before too. Without the HUD on, it's not really all that possible to know. There is a screen up there that's a little bit helpful, but I don't think it's quite right in this version. There we go, come to a stop, get the doors open. Door opens the usual keys. You can use the controls on the wall if you want to, but you certainly don't need to. So if you feel like jumping up to use those controls every time you stop somewhere, you go right ahead. Enjoy it. Alright, doors closed. We can go again. So releasing the brakes, just wait a few moments and we should be able to power now. Promising. The bell doesn't start with the horn on this one, so you have to start it yourself. Now the platform, bell off. We're allowed to run at 45 at this point. Being allowed to speed up again to 90 now. Now you can still operate it without the safety system fuse on, because you still get this bar, but it's grey instead of being green. So you still get told what speed to do. It just doesn't enforce it. Now the next thing I want to show you is recovering from an emergency brake. So let's give that a try now. So we'll just go straight to emergency. Take our throttle back to 0. Once the train stops, you put your brake lever into the handle off position and put your reverser, whoops, wrong lever, on the rail driver there. Put your reverser back to neutral, and now we have to wait. So we've got a PCS light up there. We have a 1 minute timer now, so we just have to wait for that to expire. And then at least in theory, we should be able to release. So why don't we have a look at outside of the train while we're waiting for the minute. Air brakes are fully exhausted. Still haven't had quite a minute yet though. Red light still on. I'll just take it out to 30 seconds and then I'll try and release it. And we'll see what happens. Alright, let's give it a try. There we go. Brakes are pumping up. We can go back into forwards now. Hopefully the PCS light went off. No, it didn't. That's sad. Oh, you could assume the PCS light should have gone off. Let's just say it that way. Let's give it a crack and see if we can drive. We're moving. Acceleration's picking up, so I'd suggest we are powering. We're not just rolling, so yeah, that worked. We'll just take it into New York Penn now. Head under the river, and we'll close out that tutorial there. Now that was a speed down from 90 down to 75, but we're well under it, so it doesn't really matter. I can see there's a speed down to 60 coming soon using the trickery of the HUD. So we'll just stay below 60. You do get the occasional weird speed drop that I don't think should be there. And I've reported them, so we shall see what others think. Coming into the East River tunnels now. Acknowledging the speed down to 60. Let's give it a light service because we're going down a fairly steep hill. Let's get the speed back down to about 55 and then I'll release. There we go. Another application. Let's bring it down to 45. Acknowledge the speed down. I was already braking at that time. Now I'll probably have to brake again because we're going to go over the speed limit. So just hold it there. This is where you'd rather be just doing this and just coming down the hill on the dynamics. Alright. Put that there. Trains recognise that we are going to come down. Get down. Just release those again. So basically what we saw happen there was the limit came down to 30 with the green bar. We were still doing a bit above 40, so we had a red bar, and I applied a fairly heavy brake. I came down to about 85 pounds on the equalising reservoir, and that was enough to put us into suppression, which meant that we didn't get a penalty. And here we go again. Same deal. I think that time I actually did get a penalty. I didn't quite come to a stop. I'm not sure if that was my brake or if I got a penalty. This is very hard to get used to. Actually, it must have been my brake because it didn't say it was a penalty. terribly far off a 15 limit. So we're not speeding up anymore. It makes me think we're on the uphill part of this tunnel now. Just give it a bit of power. Now I know we have to go to 15 soon, so I'm just going to stay under 15. As I get used to it, I'm more likely to run at the 20 for a bit longer. It's not dissimilar to the system on LIRR, but it's somewhat better implemented, although it does have a few funny things happening here and there. But I'm sure they'll get ironed out either before release or after with a patch. These tunnels aren't such exciting running, but that's life. Just put my cup on the horn button. Just at the end of the tunnel, coming into the Penn station area. See that the green bar there is dropping down to 15. Now 15 is the right speed, even though it's showing 20 at the moment. I'd stick with 15. Interesting to see what the HUD says, actually. Yes, so the HUD says a little slower than 20. Let's put the cab load on so you can see what's happening in here. Wouldn't normally run with it, but we are in the dark, and the whole point of this is so you see the controls. And the back of the train's still coming up that steep hill, so I'm still putting quite a bit of power into it. You have to try and look at the actual points or switches to figure out where you're going to understand which signal applies to you. Yeah, it's just a couple of floating things there. Alright, we're on the flat now. I should be able to just roll in the rest of the way. Almost at the end, and then I'll show you how to shut it down as though you were changing ends. Got a yellow signal up there on our right. Just about there now. Let's do a bit of a service brake just to get us stopped. Right, we'll get the doors open now. Now we want to put the brakes into handle off. Cut them out. Headlights off. Ditch lights off. Marker lights on. So that's putting the red lights on out the back there. Oh, and it's finished the thing. But the next thing you would do is put the reverser into the isolated position. And then you can leave the cab. All done. Head up the other end. Alrighty, well, thanks for watching the tutorial. If you've got any questions, put them into the comments below and I will see what I can do. See you later.